what? This is totally my fault. I feel like a kid in the candy store. There's so much stuff here to see and to look at. We might have to do a part 2 at some point.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, you might have to actually create an astronomy museum in town.
Anyways,
I can see, yeah, you can see the stars right through the dome, right? Oh, if this was me, Matteo, I would have this in the basement. I'd just be sitting under it any cloudy night. Hey, everybody. My name is Chris. I am with the Hamilton Amateur Astronomy Club, and we're doing another segment of Talking Telescopes. And today I'm standing here with Matteo, who is a member of many different astronomy clubs. He is an avid astronomer, astrophotographer, aficionado of all fine things related to astronomy, and we're going to be looking at his extensive and incredible collection of astronomy artifacts as we go through and have a look at what Matteo has.
Yes, so this is called a Pi Finder. This is actually something you could build or buy yourself right now. It's a cool little device that has a Raspberry Pi inside. And all it is really is there's this camera here that constantly takes pictures of the night sky, and it actually plate solves. So it runs through a database stored in the computer, and it figures out where you're pointing in the sky. And using the keypad here, you could choose what object you want to move your telescope to. And using the pictures and the plate solving, it tells you how far you need to move your telescope in both axes to get to the object you want.
Wait, get out. Is that an actual screen?
Yep, it's a little OLED screen that I soldered on. And yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, most people just buy them, but this one I actually made myself. So my favorite color is yellow, so I made it all yellow.
I respect that. My favorite color is actually yellow as well. So really, you can clip this onto any visual telescope.
Yep. So it's just a simple finder shoe, like most other telescopes. And this frame is also 3D printed. So if you have like the old Meade finders that have that like T shape, you could just print a different base and put it on there.
So where's the actual camera?
It's just this little thing right here.
So that is the part that points out.
Yep. So this
Look
is the
at
camera.
that. Wow.
Yeah, it's just like a little tiny sensor.
And how much of the sky does it capture for plate solving?
I
have so many questions.
I forgot the exact size. I think it's a fairly wide field with this little lens. The main use for these small camera sensors and lenses is for like security cameras. So they come really small, and this is just a 16 millimeter lens. So wow. Again, it's a pretty wide field of view.
I am flabbergasted. That is so awesome. How long did it take you to put this together?
It took a few weeks for the parts to arrive, and it took a few more weeks for me to solder it all together, quite a few soldering points. And it was also my first time soldering an actual project together. Yeah, my name is Matteo Stati. I'm currently in 4th year of undergraduate astrophysics at York University. And since 2020, I've been collecting telescopes and other astronomical items like books and other artifacts. And currently I have this collection here, and I cannot wait to share all the different items I have.
How did you get inspired to get into astronomy? What got you into the hobby?
I'd say the very first thing that got me interested was back in, I believe it was 2006, with Pluto being demoted to a dwarf planet. I was still in kindergarten when that happened, and I was told by one of my teachers about it in class, and that got me interested. Why did that happen? And so that was a start, but it wasn't until halfway through high school when I really started being interested in it for a job and for a hobby. And then that's right when COVID started is when I got my first telescope, and then it all came to here.
Now, what was your first telescope?
So my first actual telescope was one of those cheap Celestron telescopes, but I was already talking to people in the hobby, and they gave me warnings about it. And so after a while, I realized that there was an issue with the mount, and so instead of trying to put up with it or giving up in the hobby, we ended up agreeing to return it. And after a bit, we ended up getting a 10-inch Dobsonian, and
Hmm.
that's still one of my favorite telescopes to use to this day.
What was this Celestron that you had problems with?
I believe it was the Astromaster 130, something like that. It's just a
Okay, so
little
that was the
reflector.
manual mount.
Yeah.
What got you into collecting astronomy artifacts?
Well, even before telescopes, I liked going to antique stores all the time and finding cool different pieces of technology and other antique items that could still be used. I like old things that are still like useful and interesting. And so when I started getting to telescopes, I thought, oh, what if I look for antique telescopes? And so I kept looking to now.
That's actually really interesting. So, um, do you find that connecting with the past and the history brings you closer to the hobby itself?
Yes, I do think so because, like, looking back in history for astronomy, you could see like different techniques used, different, uh, like different sky conditions, different ideas on how the universe works, and it's really interesting to compare then to now, and you could also like get advice from people in the past as well, like on how to use telescopes and how to properly observe, like even uh like people observing 200 years ago has like made groundwork for how astronomy is done today.
So you can literally trace the path of astronomy exploration over the last hundreds of years to arrive at how we are, how we've gotten to where we are today.
Yeah, it's very interesting to do. I'm actually even taking a class on history of astronomy right now. It's very interesting to see parallels and differences between then and now.
Yeah. Well, the first telescopes that were actually useful date not too that long ago. We're talking about the Renaissance period with some of the earliest designs. The Newtonians, obviously. What was the earliest telescope design?
Well, I believe, well, Galileo was the one who first popularized the telescope and
Hmm.
made it well known. And I believe telescopes were in existence for just a bit before uh, his utilization of them. So, yeah, early 1600s was the beginning. Uh, and since then, we've evolved, gotten larger telescopes, different designs, and different places to use them, different things to look at.
Oh, I would have loved to have been there in that very first instance when someone put together a telescope and decided to just look up with it.
Mm-hmm.
Just the awe of seeing things that we didn't even know were up there. That must have been incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was the first historical artifact or telescope that you were able to get your hands on?
Yes, so I believe let me think here. One of the first telescopes I ended up getting is actually the most important one right here. I actually got very lucky finding this telescope, and there's a whole story behind this one. It's a 5-inch refractor made by a man named Daniel Brand Marsh. And if you've heard of the name, he is actually the founder of the Royal Astronautical Society of Canada Hamilton Center back in 1905, I believe. And so this man has been very important for Canadian astronomy and its history.
And when did you? How did you come about this telescope? How did it fall into your hands?
Yes, so it's a very interesting story on how I even got this telescope. So it was back in June of 2022. I was actually in Nashville, Tennessee, for an astronautical internship at Vanderbilt University. And while I was there, I was contacted by someone I know. Basically, there's this place here in Ontario called the Aberfoyle Antique Market. And so every year they sell all sorts of different antiques, hundreds of vendors. And one of the vendors I know, I've volunteered with a couple of times, and I've told them about my interest in antique telescopes and astronomy. And so while I was out in Nashville, I was told about this telescope. And even though I was, so far away, I was able to convince my parents to pick this up for me. And when I got back home, I, you know, just, I was in awe with how big the telescope was, because that's something you just can't really tell just from the pictures.
How big is this telescope?
Yeah, so it's a 5-inch f/15 refractor, so it's about a 1,900 millimeter focal length. So it's a bit over 6 feet long. It's quite hard to use, but the views you get through it are downright amazing.
You talked about this telescope when you did a presentation at the HAA.
Yes.
I didn't realize from the pictures just how big this telescope is. You were telling us at the HAA how you came to understand the pedigree of this telescope. Of how did you identify it as a Marsh telescope?
Yes. So that's the big thing about this telescope. There are no maker's marks on it whatsoever. No words, no numbers, nothing. So all I had to go off of it was the design itself. And so when I first got it, I had no clue. And so I started off with like forums like Cloudy Nights, just asking, "Hey, could you guys know who made this telescope?" And so from there, I eventually reached another group called the Antique Telescope Society, who, as stated, is all about antique telescopes. And in their forums, I asked the question, and they brought up a few good ideas and a few different people to contact. I eventually contacted the past archivist of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. His name's Randall Rosenfeld, and because we were starting to think maybe this is a Canadian telescope, and so through him and the archives at the RASC, I actually saw Daniel Brand-Marsh and some of his telescopes, and one of them in particular looked very close to this telescope. And comparing the features of like the finder scope and the focuser position and the size of certain parts of the telescope, I concluded, yeah, this is a Marsh telescope.
So there are some identifying characteristics that are unique to the style that Marsh used in his telescope designs.
Yes, two in particular that are very telling. One is the focuser. I did take off the focuser for now, but what's special about the focusers that Marsh uses is that they're very long. Also uh, f/15 finder scopes, and most antique telescopes have much shorter finder scopes. So that was one tell. The other tell was the focuser. The knobs are actually, compared to most telescopes, the focuser knob is upside down where they're above the tube.
I was just noticing that, yes.
Yeah, and so here, if I turn this, you could see
Yeah.
that the knobs are above the tube.
Wow, yeah.
And that's something Marsh always did.
Why would he do that? What do you think?
I'm not too certain. I think that either it was a way to improve the quality of the focuser, or maybe it was just something he preferred.
Yeah. And I see the focuser, everything is inside too. That's very, what is that knob at the bottom?
Oh, that's just the lock knob. So if you get the right focus, you could lock it.
Lock your focus, yeah. And that's bigger than a 2-inch. How big is this barrel?
Yeah, it's slightly more than 2 inches. And the another interesting thing about this telescope is that the draw tube is actually over it's like 14 inches long. It's crazy long.
So you can really rack that out.
Yeah, I could just keep going. Yeah, it's my guess is that it was for photography with cameras that require like a longer distance to bring into focus, at least for the cameras of his time, because I'm not sure why else you would need such a long draw tube.
Now, I did ask you a question when you presented at the HAA, which was, have you tried imaging with this telescope?
Yes, I still haven't gone around to doing it. And normally with antique telescopes, like, oh, no, it's for visual, it's for visual. But in this particular case, like Marsh was known for astrophotography, so I think I should honor that and try out photos through this probably not full on astrophotography, but at least like, just hooking up a simple camera and trying to get pictures of like the moon or planets, just to see what it's like, and that'll also let me compare to his original pictures and what it looks like through modern cameras. I think that would be a cool comparison.
Are there any examples of pictures that he would have taken with this type of design?
Yes, so he's taken quite a few images. The most notable ones being, I remember he taken a few pictures of the moon, like a nice full moon photo. He's taken pictures of Jupiter and Saturn, and I'd say his most notable photography is eclipse photography, because one thing he was well known for is attending total solar eclipses, going on expeditions to do scientific research on eclipses.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought his telescopes with him and imaged the eclipses.
Wow. How cool would it have been to bring this telescope to Quebec for the 2024 eclipse?
Yeah, seriously considered it, but because it was my first eclipse, I didn't want to go crazy with what I was packing, and I didn't want to end up missing the views trying to set something like this up.
Of course.
Yeah, so this is the book collection. I believe it's probably about 200 books at this point. Haven't been counting for a while. The ones up here are the oldest ones, dating back to the 1800s. I guess a notable book to include is this book right here. It's an autobiography of a man named John A. Brashear, who is one of the best telescope makers of his time in the mid to late 1800s in the United States. And it's actually the telescope, the man who actually made the lens of my antique telescope. And this is a special version of the copy. Only a few have been made that are actually, it's actually a pre-production unit.
That ties back to the telescope that you have.
Yes.
Do you...
So the person who made the telescope, Daniel Brand Marsh, he didn't actually make the lenses himself. He actually bought them from Brashear because Brashear made a lot of these lens sets for telescope makers at the time. And Brashear actually has a cottage in Muskoka, so he actually frequently comes to Canada. And I assume he knew about Brashear because of just how well of a telescope maker he was, and maybe they've even met in person. I mean, this is an interesting book, mainly because of how cool it looks, but also this is a style of book that you don't see anymore, where it's actually two books in one in order to make sure that the book is actually large enough to be worth printing. So this is actually two subjects, one being just English, and the other one being something called astronography. So I believe this is that's about the study of like the actual locations of planets and other objects in the sky.
Very cool. Tell me about what you're passionate about. What brings you to instrumentation? What is it that you find appealing about it?
I'd say the hands-on of it all. I love actually building and working with equipment and doing like research or theoretical stuff, just sifting through data all the time. And it's not as interesting to me as actually working with the telescopes and building things for astronomy.
Now, I remember you mentioning before that you went through quite the extensive restoration project on this telescope. And I see you've got some other historical telescopes here too. What kind of restorative work would you have to have done in terms of cleaning them up and bringing them back into a usable state?
Well, for this telescope, it was actually not that difficult. Surprisingly, the telescope was kept in a really good condition. According to the seller of the telescope, it was found in an estate sale, just sitting in an attic in its box. So it was pretty well preserved. Apart from the chipping paint, all I had to really do to restore it was to clean the lenses, and so I did that soon after I got the telescope. It was very straightforward. I did get some help, but it was not too bad.
Now, did you have to do restorative work on any of these other telescopes? Which one would have been would have given you the most problems?
Well, there's one in particular that I'll bring up later, but it's not actually an antique. One of the large restorations projects I have worked on that's not up here is a 8-inch reflector that's called the Criterion Dynascope Deluxe. So they were made in the 50s, and it features like a heavy cast iron pier mount bottom to it, and when I got it, there was no optics and the motor was broken. So I had to replace all of that and cleaned out the gears and got rid of some of the rust. And so it was a fairly large restoration project. And I still need to work on the paint, but it looks a lot better than it did when I received the telescope. The antiques I've gone so far, they've been pretty easy to work with.
So mostly it's been cleaning them properly.
Yes, yeah, just making sure there's no like mold or fungus or scratches, and making sure nothing bad will happen to the lenses. Another interesting addition that I actually did, that I got help with, was as you can see here, I have a modern eyepiece and diagonal on this telescope. And so originally, the only eyepiece you could put on this telescope was the 1 1/4 inch eyepieces, and it was just a friction fit brass tube to put on the eyepieces, and it wasn't really good with modern eyepieces. And so one thing I noticed was this draw tube was a 2-inch diameter, and there was threading on the end. And so what I did was I got help from one of the members of the Hamilton Rask Center to machine an adapter so that I could use a Schmidt-Cassegrain back tube, Schmidt-Cassegrain like focuser eyepiece holder, and so I just threaded it on and it works. Yeah, so this is planet art that I've been doing for the last year now. It's very simple. I just layer up some spray paint and crumple up newspaper, layering it onto the spray paint and peeling it off, and all the crinkles tear off different layers, causing this unique paint effect that look like plants. And then I flick on some white paint with my fingers and it creates stars. Yeah, so this is another art project I did, a one-off. It's as you can see, it's stained glass of the solar system. So what I did was I roughly tried to get the proportions of the planets just to see, like just to show it visually, although it's way off obviously. And all I did was I actually did a stencil of each planet, making sure I get the curvature lines correct, and then I selected what is as close of the right colors as possible. And the only other thing of note is this right here, the asteroid belt. This is actually antique glass, and you can see all the nice little bubbles to indicate the asteroids themselves. And yeah, it's a really nice project. It took a while to make, but I very much enjoy it. So over here is parts of the telescope I'm building with help from Brian from 10 Telescopes. This is actually a project I've had since 2023, where I first started by making my own mirror, which is in this box here. It's a 16-inch mirror, and it's only f3.79, so it's a very short telescope. And so after grinding the mirror, I again got help from Brian to 3D print the actual frame of the telescope, and we're nearly done with it. So you could see this is the upper tube assembly here, and for the summer of this year, I will be going to Vermont to a telescope convention called Stellafane, which is mainly about telescope making, and I'll actually enter this into their competition for mechanical design and optical quality and how well it works. And so I can't wait to have this set up and ready to go. Again, here's the upper tube assembly. Let me move the box out of the way. And
so I got to ask, so is this where the trusses are going to go, the struts?
Yep. So the truss poles go directly into the frame. And again,
I see. Okay, right there.
Yeah, and because it's 3D printed, we don't need these large blocks sticking out, so it's integrated into the actual cage itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have these clamps here that just get tightened down by these thumb screws, and it's very intuitive and easy to use.
And are you already working on the base?
Yes, I just don't have it here. It's at Brian's house because.
So you're using like an industrial size almost printer. He's got a big one there.
He's built his own printer that could print, parts this big. In fact, this project here actually isn't like as big as he could print, like with his printer. So we pushed his printer to its limits for this project.
I think I've already used the term kid in a candy store, and there's so much to see in this room and in other parts of your collection. We've looked at some of the art that you've made, Matteo. We've looked at your extensive book collection, and including some of your historical books, which were really fascinating. And it would be really cool is if can you just walk me through your collection? What do we have here?
All right. Yeah. So over here we have another antique telescope. This is a 4-inch Broadhurst and Clarkson refractor. And so this actually came with this other Broadhurst Clarkson refractor over here, this 3-inch one. And so together, I believe they were both sold from the same place in Quebec, actually. And so they eventually ended up here in Ontario. And so, yeah, this is a 4-inch, I believe this is called the Premier Deluxe.
And I can see that looks like a 3D printed part there too.
Yeah, and so I had to do a bit of restoration on this one because actually this is not the original tripod. This is from a Unitron telescope from the 60s, and so it was retrofitted. So like they gouged out these hooks here for this telescope, but the problem for this telescope is that it's not balanced, so it would just droop upwards. And so what this Unitron tripod had was this rod that connected to the telescope for fine adjustment. And so, actually, the original Broadhurst Clarkson refractor also had the same design. And so there was like this peg here that was used for that. And then there was a peg here in the original, in this replacement tripod as well, that were used for the same thing. And so what I did was I printed this adapter here and bought this brass rod that fit this diameter here, and now I could connect the tripod and the telescope together properly and could actually use the telescope for observations.
And does this one use a diagonal, or do you have to look straight through the back?
Yes. So this telescope actually came with several eyepieces, so that it did come with a star and sun diagonal. And so currently I just have this long eyepiece in it. This right here is a 4-inch f15 refractor, and there's almost no information about it. We got it from Western Ontario and near the Detroit border, actually. And what's interesting about it is, again, there's barely any history behind it. And all we were told by the seller is that it once was mounted on a boat. So our belief is that, you could see this military gray paint, and they probably mounted it onto a ship for spotting. But
Not artillery.
yeah, it looks like artillery, but no, it's yeah, again, very unique telescope. There's almost no information about it. Another interesting feature about it is the finder scope actually swivels. You could see it just
Oh
swivels
yeah, so you
about.
can get closer.
Yeah, and I've never seen any telescope that has something like this before.
No, it's a solid construction too, so it keeps in place. Like obviously, this was a precision instrument, but at the same time, just the construction of the tube and how it was put together, it almost gives you a sense that it was someone took industrial parts, mashed them together with some lenses, and they had a telescope.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, again, very much a mystery, but still really interesting. Moving on, we have this right here. This is a very interesting piece, and it's something you can't really. It's hard to understand like what it was used for until you look it up. But just by looking at it, you can see it's a 5-inch refractor actually, but it's folded. So there's a mirror at the back here that folds the light so it focuses at the front here. And usually there are folded refractors for astronomy, but there's two folds so that you're not looking right in front of the lens and it's still in the back of the telescope. So because of that, like it's pretty obvious that it's not an astronomical telescope. And it took a while for me to figure out what it was, but what it was actually used for was aligning sextants. So
Oh,
so back in World War II, one of these were mounted, far away on a hill, very far, like kilometers away, I believe, and attached to here on the, at the front of the telescope or back or whatever, is a laser light that expands with the lens, and so that points, goes all the way to the sextant that wants to be collimated, and you use that expanded laser light to align it to the telescope here. So it's actually a collimator, pretty much.
that is super interesting. Wow. Okay.
Over here we have some paraphernalia and other artifacts, some coins from the Apollo missions, a ruler from the Adler Planetarium in Chicago, something interesting. It even has information about plants as well. Here's another art project of mine, coppersmithing. So what I did was we used a bakelite pan, so just a bunch of molten bakelite, and we placed this copper sheet over it, and using a hammer we punched out these planet shapes in the sun. So it was a cool project. Moving on, we have back here a little display of different things. On the right here are postcards from the David Dunlap Observatory. So you could see the telescope, the spectrometer, the domes themselves, and the library. On the left here are coins from the Very Large Array in New Mexico, just regular touristy coins. And then these three items here are recreations of various astronomical artifacts by a man named Randall Rosenfeld, who I mentioned earlier. And so one thing he did a lot in the museum being built in the RASC headquarters is he recreated a lot of these amazing astronomical artifacts, and he also made a couple for me, and so I have them housed here. One last important thing here is in this display case here is some parts from the Broadhurst-Clarkson refractors I got, as well as the finder scope for the Mars telescope housed in the center, because again, it's very bulky and takes up a lot of space, and it doesn't really get into focus with any of my eyepieces, so I just took it off for now.
What's the story with this little green guy?
Ah, yes. So, as I kind of alluded to a bit ago, I actually went to New Mexico back in August of last year. That's where I got those coins from the VLA. And so while I was there, we stayed in Socorro, and there was actually quite a few alien stories in Socorro, similar to Roswell. And so there was a store there that sold these giant concrete aliens, and we bought a little one as a souvenir, so you could see this one admiring the view through this telescope.
Yeah. He's looking for life.
Yep. This is a Celestron C14, a 14-inch Cassegrain. And so I was actually able to acquire 6 of them in a lot pretty much a year ago. I actually got these from a Canadian government surplus auction. And so what they used these for was back in the 2010s, early 2000s, even before that too, they actually uh, bought a bunch of these telescopes from Efston Science, if you've heard of that place. Very
Yeah.
important telescope place in Toronto.
I was very sad when they went
Yeah.
and closed down.
And so they bought a bunch of these telescopes and they mounted them pointing directly up. And they were used for monitoring aerosols in the air for like sky quality and other important things. And I believe you could still search it up. And it's they actually worked with NASA for some time, sharing this data they've been gathering. But unfortunately, the program ended, I believe, in the early mid 2010s, and so they eventually sold off these telescopes.
So you ended up with 6 of them?
Yep.
Wow.
So my idea is to keep one and sell the rest, because these are pretty nice telescopes.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that what is that? A
Uh,
little model.
Yeah. So this is a little model telescope.
Uh-huh.
It was, well, I believe, just sold in the U.S.
Does it work?
Yeah, it is a little telescope. It's not that well. The mirror is only like a 2-inch diameter.
Yeah.
Inside, but yeah, it's like I believe it's mainly modeled after like I believe the Hale telescope in California,
Uh-huh.
but it also vaguely looks like the David Dunlap Observatory telescope in here in Ontario.
Yeah.
That's mainly why I bought it.
Like this one caught my eye for a couple of reasons. One of them is I haven't seen a mount quite like that in terms of the tripod. So
Yeah.
that is a clock drive that you've got paired with what looks like an 8-inch. This would have been similar to that classic image of Leonard Nimoy standing with the Celestron telescope back in the 1970s for one of their ads. But what I wanted to ask you about is, first of all, that is a massive finder that's on there. It's a C90, I can see just looking from this angle. That's what it says on the side.
Yep.
And then the tripod itself, it's got a very unique structure with legs that look like they don't wobble. So you want to tell me about that?
Yeah, so this is a Celestron C8. I believe this one is from the early 80s. So it still has the orange tube. And yeah, back then they had these interesting like double tube tripods. And this one came with the equatorial wedge as well. And so yeah, this is a nice little kit. And the C90 I got separately from a online auction. And so this is actually a photography version, so it's not really meant to be here. You actually usually pair it with a camera, this version of it. And but yeah, this C8 actually came with this little adapter plate for mounting one of these as a finder scope. So I had to pair them together. So I'll first talk about this one in front of it, so we could just get it out of the way. This is just a simple Tasco back in the 60s. I believe this is the 10TE5. So I found this on Facebook Marketplace at a good price, and I tried it out a couple of times. It's really nice. It even comes with the tracking drive motor. And so, yeah, very standard of its time. But the telescope behind it, if I just try to move this one out of the way.
I'm sorry, before you go there, I think that's a really neat feature that it has at the bottom too. So it's got the solar plate.
Yes.
That looks like it pivots so that you can put it in front of the 90-degree diagonal there so that your eyepiece, oh, look at that. So your eyepiece turns upside down so you can look at the sun.
Yeah, or you could turn this to...
Yeah, but then you have to go upside down to look at it. That is so cool.
This a lot of little refractors like this during the 50s and 60s came with these. If you look on like Facebook Marketplace or Kijiji and see one of these for sale, a lot of them do come with these solar projector screens. They're pretty fun to use.
Right.
Although it's also scary with pointing the telescope at the sun.
No. Well, I guess that makes sense then why you'd want to pivot the eyepiece upside down so there's no chance whatsoever that you'd accidentally look at the sun.
Mm-hmm. And so, now that we're done with this telescope, I could talk about this interesting telescope here. Let me just move this one out of the way. And so this telescope right here is you could already see how unique it is. It's a Vixen telescope, 80 millimeter refractor. And so it was only made for a couple of years, I believe, in 1970 to 1972 or 71 maybe. And so it's called the Vixen Uzama 80. And so what's special about this is back in then and even now in Japan, baseball is very popular. And so Vixen wanted to capitalize on it back then. And another interesting thing is that Vixen just changed their name to Vixen at this point. And so they thought, okay, let's make a telescope that's for baseball fans. And so they named it after a fictional baseball player named Armstrong Uzuma. And so they made this telescope right here, which, you could kind of see looks kind of like a baseball bat.
That's what caught my attention. Yeah, you don't often see compound telescopes that are made up of two different tube sizes.
Yeah, and so this small tube here is like a 60 millimeter diameter, and then this one's like 100 millimeter diameter, and so they just mashed them together with this flange here and called it a day.
And how big is the actual aperture?
80 millimeters.
So it's an 80 millimeter, and how much of that is hood, or is the lens right up to the top?
Yeah, it's very unique. You could actually see some knobs here. This is where it is, the lens. So it's like just recessed into the tube itself. And it's so there is a bit of a dew shield just built into it. And it's again, very interesting design, although it is completely unbalanced and it's hard to use.
But it's got some real history to it. Over here, you've got a Skywatcher Dobsonian mount, but I don't recognize the telescope that you have sitting in it. What is that?
Yes, so the base, the mount that you could see here is the mount for my 10-inch Dobsonian that I've talked about earlier that I still use. But the telescope on it currently is a little project I did 3 years ago, where I actually made a 6-inch f8 Dobsonian and 3D printed a lot of the parts. It was just again another online design that you could do yourself, and so I just ordered the aluminum extrusion and put everything together just as a nice summer project.
So, Matteo, I want to thank you so much for inviting us in and showing me around this awesome collection. Not only do you have a wealth of knowledge about the history of astronomy, the history of the equipment, your penchant for repairing equipment, for building your own additions, for building your equipment, all of the art that you're doing along with it. This has just been such a fascinating visit. So thank you so much. Thanks everybody for watching, and until next time, we're signing off for Talking Telescopes.